Hi, everyone. I'm Avery Roberts. I'm an artist, entertainer, and youth climate activist. And this is Natalie Mevane, Zero Hour's Chief Program Officer. I'm starting this series because I want to interview my fellow volunteers, coworkers at Zero Hour about their experiences, how they got into it, what do they do every day, where do they want to go from here. And I hope to eventually interview our founding members, our longtime members, and even people outside of our organization, because I feel like a lot of times activists, and not just in the climate space, but everywhere, we get either put on a pedestal and people think like, man, how do they do that? I don't know how to get involved. Or we have a lot of bad faith criticism that goes like, climate activists want to steal your jobs. They don't care about your future, but we do. We want everybody to have good jobs and a good future. That's why we're doing this. So I want us to be able to tell our own stories and make sure everybody can see that we're human beings. The activism is one thing that we do, but it's part of our lives, you know. We didn't just pop out of the earth and go like, I want to be an activist. So Natalie, that brings me to our first question, which is when did you become an activist?
Well, thank you so much for having me here, Avery. Definitely appreciate being the first person as a part of this new series. And I've been a longtime member of Zero Hour and more recently became a staff member as the Chief Program Officer.
Mm-hmm.
But for 6.5 years prior to that, I was a volunteer. So up until
Wow.
April, yeah, I was a volunteer for 6.5 years. Zero Hour is really built mainly as a volunteer organization. It's a place where if you care about something, you care about the planet, you care about people, it's a place where you can come and you can join. And so how did I first become an activist organizer? Wow. My first memory of doing anything related to the planet, climate action, or anything was in 1990. I was 5 years old. And Nickelodeon, my parents had just gotten cable. And so we had Nickelodeon. And they had a quick sort of maybe 1 minute or 2 minute overview of this thing in between commercials that they would do. And they said, you know, we want to tell you about global warming. And that was what most people were calling it back then. And they gave an analogy of global warming is like a blanket that covers the earth. And every time, you know, you can imagine if you're covering the earth in a blanket, it gets too hot. That's what carbon
Yeah,
dioxide
that makes
does.
sense.
That's what carbon dioxide does. And so they gave the
Mm-hmm.
analogy of a blanket sort of acting like a blanket over the earth, which is carbon dioxide. Now,
Mm-hmm.
5-year-old me didn't understand. I thought what I took from it was that if you wear a blanket and you get too hot and you create too much heat, your body was creating global warming. And so this is
Oh,
winter time. Yeah, and I was 5. I
not
didn't know.
quite it.
I was 5 years old. And so from that night on, I decided it was winter time. And I decided I wasn't going to sleep with my blanket anymore at night
No.
because I thought I was going to get too hot and contribute to global warming. So I tried it out. First 2 nights, I was freezing, I was shivering. And then my mom would wake me up for school for kindergarten, and she would be very surprised that I was not wearing my blanket. And she's like, don't you want your blanket? And I kept saying, no, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. And she thought that was strange because I'm usually somebody who's always cold. So she was like, okay. So finally, after 3 nights of this, she kept asking me, and I said, "Ugh," I told her what I told her. I said, well, Nickelodeon says that if you wear a blanket, you'll get too hot and it will cause global warming. And she was like, what? And she just started laughing. She was like, oh my gosh. She's like, I don't know exactly how it works, but I can guarantee you it doesn't work like that. And I argued with her and I said, no, that's exactly how it works. I can't wear my blanket anymore. Nickelodeon told me. So she was like, all right, well, do what you do. And like, if you want to be cold, it's not
The
going to affect.
winter?
It was wintertime. And she was like, okay, you do what you want. So I went one more night. I didn't wear my blanket. And finally, I was like, no, I have to find another action that is going to help. So I decided to keep wearing my blanket. And then luckily, a short time later, I found out how it actually works. But I count that as my first climate action in 1990 when I was 5. And I looked for some reason, I don't know why, but for some reason, when I heard about global warming for the first time, I knew that it was serious. Like I just knew. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, this is important. I feel like this is going to have I feel like there's going to be a very bad long-term problem. And I don't know why I knew at 5, but I felt it. And I just decided that I was going to start doing something. So then I moved on to
Mm-hmm.
doing actual actions that weren't that. And over time, I just always knew that I wanted to spend my life protecting the earth. And it just
Mhm.
eventually turned into my career.
That's really interesting because I had a similar experience, and I think it was actually younger than 5, but I don't quite remember, where I heard about global warming, which was still what people were calling it when I was super little. And I somehow knew that this was a big deal, but I didn't understand it that well. And I'm talking like 3 or 4, I didn't really get what was going on. But when I said, like, I think this was a big deal, um like, my parents would just say, like, oh, scientists will figure something out, or don't worry about it. And they were trying to make me feel better, but that's not always necessarily what we need to hear.
Yeah.
And
I feel you.
a lot of, like, even now when I talk to them about it, they'll be like, look, we don't have time for this stuff. And something I want to try and make more clear to people is, yeah, not everybody has like the time to be like, not everyone can be an activist like full time, but there's still something you can do. And that doesn't necessarily mean like stopping eating meat or whatever. What really makes the difference is the climate action. And that can be like small things regularly, but that's better than nothing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The second question is, what brought you to Zero Hour?
So I got introduced to Zero Hour. I actually remember the exact date. It was January 26,
Wow.
2018. Yeah, well, it was an impactful day because I met the first founder of Zero Hour that day. And I knew that we were going to work together. I just knew immediately. And so I was the first day on the board of the Power Shift Network, which is an organization that I was a part of when I was a youth climate activist. At the time, it was called Energy Action Coalition. And it was the organization that introduced me to organizing. It was the organization that introduced me to
Mhm.
lobbying. It was the organization that I say in the end is what really sparked my career and showing me what I wanted to do. When I was fresh out of college, when I had just turned 22 and was at the
Wow.
very first power shift in '07. Yeah, and it was at my school, University of Maryland, my former school. I had just graduated that May. And so years later, I'm now on the board of the org. They changed the name to Power Shift Network at the time. And I was at the annual meeting, which is the yearly conference that PowerShift has, where it's every single network member, there has over 80 organizations that are part of the PowerShift network, the entire
Mhm.
board and the whole staff. And my first day there, Friday, January 26th, there was a person that stood up in the room. We were about to go out into breakout rooms on the Friday evening, breakout groups sort of to pick up projects that we
Mhm.
could work on because they had about 5 different Power Shift sponsored programs that were going to be started up. And so you could pick which corner of the room you wanted to go to, what project you wanted to work on. And there was this person who stood up and to introduce herself. They asked her if anyone had questions. And this woman stood up, well, it was a teenager, it stood up and says that she thinks she's the youngest person in the room. And she was 16. And she said that she had started this organization, Zero Hour, and that they were doing this big march in DC and cities around the world, and that they wanted to youth to come together to march in terms of related to climate change. And that she gave sort of a shout out to the breakout side, like, hey, come over here at 6 o'clock, if you want to know more. And I thought, you know what, that's going to be the group I join because the other options were cool too. But I was like, that's so cool. She's 16 and she started an org. Like, I had so many questions. I didn't even know you could do that. I had no idea that actual
Really?
children could start organizations. Figured you had to have a board, and to have a board, you have to be at least 18
Mhm.
years old. And I didn't know at that time that I was on her board. I didn't know that because Zero Hour
Mhm.
was fiscally sponsored by PowerShift Network. So her board was myself and our other board members. And so I thought to myself, wow,
Interesting.
yeah, I'm going to go, find her and ask her some questions. I'll definitely go to her breakout at 6, but we had a 15-minute break coming up. So I walk around the room to ask her questions. I just wanted to meet her first because, like, this person is like very powerful. Like, I really want to know who this person is. So I'm walking around the room like, huh, where did she go? Like, she disappeared. She moved so quickly. She went, went out the room for a second. So, like, whatever, I'll find her at 6 when the time comes. And just as I give up on finding her, I get a tap on my shoulder and I turn around and it's Jamie and she's standing there. She says, hi, I'm Jamie. I wanted to meet
She
you.
found you.
She found me
That's
and
so
I was
cool. She
looking for
wanted to
her,
meet you.
but I was looking for her and we were looking for each
Hmm.
other at the same time because we each wanted to meet the other person. And that's when I'm like, this was fate. And so I'm like, word? I said, I was looking for you. And she's like, okay, great. And then she jumps into the recruitment spiel. This is what she said. And this is all word for word. She said, so earlier today, when we're doing introductions, you said that you're the Dirty Fuels lobbyist at the National Sierra Club. And I was like, how did she remember this? At about 2 o'clock that day, when we started the day, everyone in a circle, it's over 100 people at this conference, in a big circle, did their intros, name, city, pronouns, position,
100 people.
about 100 people in the room. And
Wow.
I said, Natalie Meebane, based in Washington, D.C. I'm the Dirty Fuels lobbyist at the National Sierra Club. And first day on the board, I'm on the board of the Power Shift Network. She
Mhm.
had remembered every single thing people had said and remembered in her mind, okay, that's a key person I need to talk to. I want to recruit that person. She just remembered it. And so she said, you mentioned earlier that you are the, Dirty Fuels lobbyist, National Sierra Club. We're putting on marches in DC and around the world. And we also want to have a lobby day the day before the march and blah, 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 blah. And she goes through the spiel and she says, so I wanted to know, would you like to put on the lobby day? And she just asked me to put on the lobby day.
That takes so
Like,
much initiative.
so much. She did not know me. We had never met or ever spoken in our lives. And so I'm just like, this is so funny. I wanted to go see in a ways that I could volunteer for her march. Like, I put on a lot of marches in DC.
Mhm.
I was like, well, I can help them get permits. I can help them do stuff. And now here she was asking me if I would like to be responsible for an entire day of the week of action. This was to launch 0 Hour. And
Mhm.
it was like,
That's a lot of responsibility.
I didn't know this person. I was like, how does she even know if I'm good at like lobbying? Like, how does she even know? And so like she just had trust. And so I asked a couple questions. I said, well, I don't think you should do it on the Friday because Friday's not a good day for lobby day. Members go home. If you want
Mm.
to get member level meetings, you should have it by the Thursday, the 19th, because she wanted to have the March July 21st, Saturday. So she
Mhm.
said, okay, it will be on the 19th. And I was like, oh, wow. She just like switched the date of the lobby day. And then I was like, you want to do a House and Senate? She said, yes. And I said, well, it might be hard to do House and Senate because you want to have people matching like who they're constituents of. So you should probably just do it in the Senate to make it simpler. And then it's less walking back and forth between the House and Senate offices. They're
Mm.
not close. And this way it'll be easier and you can have people come from different states that actually that's their senator. She said,
Makes
okay, it'll
sense.
be in the Senate. It will be in the Senate on July 19th. So I'm like, wow, not me already planning this. So finally, I was like, you know what? This is the org that I went lobbying with for the first time,
Mhm.
November 5th, 2007, my first time going lobbying. And I sort of had like a little vision that day when I went lobbying that first time with Power Shift Network, which at the time was Energy Action Coalition. And I said to myself, I'm going to do this volunteer right now. And one day they'll pay me for it. One day. And they'll
One
be my
day.
career. And I kind of just saw my career in front of me that day when I was 22.
Wow.
November 5th, 2007. It was the last day of the Power Shift Network conference. We had a big lobby day and a rally outside the Capitol. And I said, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And so now it was full circle moment. It was 2018, beginning of 2018. So just 10 years and a couple months after that moment of my first time
Mhm.
lobbying. And here I was being asked by this person if I want to put on the lobby day. And I'm like, this is the org that taught me how to lobby. So I was like, you know what? This will be my project as a board member. This will be like my little, I'm giving back to the youth. I was a youth climate activist. Let me go
To
ahead
the
and give back.
youth.
So I said, sure. I just agreed. And this was January. And this lobby day wasn't happening
Mm.
until July 19th. So I just committed
That was
for
a
something
while.
7 months away. And I just decided, sure, why not? So I said, okay. And why not? She said, great. Well, 6 o'clock, we're having our breakout meeting over here. I said, yep, I'm going to come. I come there, I meet more great people. I'm like, I guess now I'm part of the team. And it was wild because I could tell from just watching her speak to everyone, I could tell that she was going to do everything she said she was going to do. And I
Yeah.
literally had, and this is something I've only told a few people, so I guess it's the first time I'm telling the story publicly. When we met, I had this feeling where I said to myself, wow, we are going to build something that's going to change the world. I don't quite know how or why, but I know it's going to change the world. And I was right. Because of meeting this person and because of this person, after 0 Hour did its first week of action, which was July 19th, July 20th, July 21st of 2018, there was this young girl in Sweden who wanted to be a part of it and who was helping out initially with the Stockholm March, because we had marches in 25 cities around the world and Washington, D.C. One of them was in Stockholm, Sweden. And then in the end, she ended up not doing much with the march, but she decided she was going to take her own climate action because she was so inspired by Zero Hour. And so she
Really?
decided.
That came from us?
Hmm?
That came from us?
Yes. So
I never knew that.
she decided, most people don't know this, and she actually I'll tell you this. So she decided she wanted to sit outside of Parliament with a sign on Fridays and skip school. And she wrote to Zero Hour, I think on Instagram, and said, "Hey, I'm Greta Thunberg, and I'm going to be sitting outside of Parliament every day. I really loved what y'all did. You showed me that you can really take action. And I'd like to invite you to join me in
So
skipping
cool.
Friday." And I remember when the message came through, because we discussed it on our leadership call. And I was like, wow, I don't know if y'all can really skip school every Friday, but write her back, set up a Zoom and, work with her. And so, yeah, that ended up being Greta Thunberg. And so because of the global action that Zero Hour took in summer of 2018, July of 2018, it sparked the entire Fridays for Future global climate strikes.
Really?
Yeah,
I kind
it
of thought
inspired
they were
Greta
older than
Thunberg.
us. I didn't
Greta
know that.
Thunberg is
So,
1 year and 2 weeks younger than Jamie.
mhm. So
Her
that
birthday is
actually
January 6th.
has some significance to me too, because I remember hearing about what she was doing as it was happening. And I didn't know that Zero Hour even existed or was part of it. But I remember being so inspired by her because I
Yeah.
think we have a lot in common. Like we're both neurodivergent and we care about a lot of the same stuff. I think we also both have anxiety, but she doesn't have to share that publicly if she doesn't want to. So it's really cool to hear like this person that I look up to a lot. Now I'm part of the organization that helped inspire her.
That helped. That is
And
that she tells this story actually in the forward for Jamie's book. She wrote the forward and she tells the story in the forward for Jamie's book, Youth to Power, where she got inspired from March for Our Lives, which was also organizing in 2018 in the US, and Zero Hours Climate Action. She's like, I want to take climate action too. And so when I saw everything that's happened since the summer of 2018, right? Now it's been over 7 years. No, 7 years, 6 years, sorry, 6 years, can't count. I knew that when we met that we were going to be working on something that would change the world. And it's nice to be right. So,
is like a lot of times with climate change, I'm like, man, I hope I'm wrong about this. But this is like where we're right about something that's really hopeful. So the next question I want to ask is, what does a typical day look like for you?
I would say nowadays, most days are there's really no typical day, honestly. I would say I always have a lot of calls. Some days I don't, some days I do, but most days I have a good number of Zoom calls. I don't have to go into an office anymore, which is so cool. I do like working from home, but I don't work alone, if that makes sense. Like I work,
Yeah,
in my own space by
totally.
myself in my apartment, but I never feel like I'm working alone. I'm always working with other people. So it still feels very collaborative, very interesting. I also do, aside from my work here at Zero Hour, I also do consulting for different environmental nonprofits. And so I help other young people also build up their orgs and do sort of like strategy consulting as well. And I've had a variety of jobs over the years. I won't go through the long list. You can find my LinkedIn. But I have always been within organizing, policy, and campaigns has always been my focus, and fundraising has always been my focus. And so I get to do all those things at Zero Hour. I do grant writing, I do campaign planning, I do lobby meetings, I do helping with team management, onboarding, coaching of management. And same thing for my other orgs that I consult for is doing the same thing. I come up with strategies to sort of build out the vision of what the org can be. And being in Zero Hour, I was an adult mentor for 6.5 years, focused on policy and finance teams. And now as a chief program officer, my role is more so to ensure that all the programs run. So even if I'm not actively involved in doing all the comms things, I have to make sure, okay, what's the comms team up to? All right, fundraising, what are we up to for this? What do we need to do? And so it sort of really works in collaboration, like especially with the executive director and with just the rest of the leadership team in general to kind of help the org be smooth. But yeah, typical day is get up, jump on some calls, emails, planning, campaign planning, juggling a million things, but always fun.
I've noticed a lot, even since I've joined Zero Hour, is we have to do so much communication, and not just communications like the team, like we have to constantly be talking to each other. We have to be collaborating with each other. I was thinking recently, like I kind of forgot that I haven't met most of you in person. We've only talked online, but I
It's
still
true.
feel like you're all my friends and we all work together, and I hope we can hang out one day. And I also want to point out, you were saying you do like policy and grant writing, and I think you don't see that in like the public vision of activism very much, because it's not as quote unquote fun. It's
Mm.
numbers, it's planning, it's things like that. But it's still a very important part of the job. So is there a way that you would like suggest people get into it, or like how can you make
Mhm.
it engaging?
Well, I mean, for grant writing in particular, or just for
Well,
anything? Because I think
well,
policy is very fun.
I
So
know you do, but
I don't
like
think policy is boring at all. It's my favorite
I
thing.
would never call it boring, but I think it can just feel depressing for some people. And it's true that a lot of our
Yeah.
politics kind of suck, but I don't think it has to.
True. I mean, I think for me, it's finding out what you are good at and what you like. I don't think there has to be sort of a one fits all. I think for me,
Yeah,
grassroots
totally.
organizing is how I entered the field. When I
Mhm.
first went to the first Power Shift conference in 2007 at University of Maryland College Park, it was a life-changing moment for me because I had never really heard of grassroots organizing. Grassroots organizing was
Really?
something that was kind of foreign to me. Yeah, I think the youth climate movement was not nearly as developed back then.
Mhm.
Smartphones weren't really out yet. I mean, they had just been invented that year. Social media wasn't really that big yet. So the way that people could connect across the world, the way that Gen Z has been able to do, millennials, we didn't really have that. We just didn't have, like,
It's
we had
true.
just got
That's
Facebook.
true.
Facebook came out 20 years ago, '04. I got it
Hmm.
October '04 when I was a sophomore in college. And it was only for university students. You had to be an active student at first for the first couple
Really?
years. Yeah, it was kind of fun though, because it was like your own little private club. People used to have their cell phone numbers and addresses on their Facebook profile.
Oh
People
dear.
being me. I had my dorm room number and my cell phone on Facebook.
No.
Yeah, for years. For years. It was totally
Well,
normal. It was not weird. And it was not, you weren't afraid of like people stalking you. It was a
it's true.
very
If there was a smaller
small
community.
very small community, and everyone who went to the same
Hmm.
school as you could see your Facebook profile. So it was open to your whole
Hmm.
school, but you had to request friendship for outside of your school. So it was
Hmm.
like a little personal club of classmates of yours. Your Facebook friends were your friends in real life. Like, I know now it seems like, totally different. But I would say that, the main thing is find the thing that doesn't feel like work. I actually said this to on the phone a few days ago to one of the Zero Hour founders, Nadia, because a lot of the founders, three out of four of them just graduated college this May. And so,
Hmm.
they're going out here starting their careers. And I said to her, she was looking at different jobs and kind of, figuring out what her next steps are. And I said to her, I said, Nadia, the thing you have to do is figure out that thing that when you do it, never feels like work. And I said to her, I said, when I'm doing lobby weeks, like I told her, this week, this just past this week right now was the 5-year anniversary of our major lobby week with Greta Thunberg. She came to DC. And yesterday, September 18th, was the 5-year anniversary of her, Vic Barrett, who's a Juliana plaintiff, and Jamie Margolin testifying in Congress at the hearing that I put on. So I put on this joint hearing and I had this whole lobby week with Greta. And I was like, wow, what a full circle moment. Like, this is the
There's so
how,
much
what I mean?
happening.
It was full circle. And I was like, this is 2019. And literally a year earlier was when she had reached out and introduced herself and
Hmm.
said, hey, this really inspired me to do this. And now a year later, we're all in DC and she's testifying in Congress with Jamie. And I was like, wow, okay, we all work together and, building this. And this week is the 5-year anniversary of that week. And I said to her, I said, this is the beginning of the 5-year anniversary of our lobby week with Greta. She's like, yeah, that's right. I said, that week, I slept probably 2 hours every night. I had so much going on. I have never worked that hard in those months. I had 2 climate strikes. I had one in DC with her on the Friday the 13th, and I had the one on the 20th
Mm.
and September 20th. I said I was so exhausted, but it never felt like work. I
Really.
was working 14, 16 hours a day, every day, including the weekends, for 2 weeks straight,
Something you
plus 12
care
hours a
about, like
day.
It's
Yeah,
something
plus
that you
12
love
hours a
to
day
do.
leading up. And I said to her, I
That's
said,
really
even though,
interesting.
yeah, even though I was so exhausted, and even though it was the most work ever, I said to Nadia, I said, it never felt like work. That's your career. And so if you, whatever it is that brings you joy and that you would do for fun and free, I used to lobby for free. I said, one day they'll pay me. And even that day, I was doing it for free for 0 hour, but I was working as the policy director at 350.org at the time. And luckily, they let me just run around the hill with y'all. So I would say that would be the best thing is find what makes you happy. And whatever that is, if it's boring, it's not for you.
Hmm.
So
I've
don't do
actually,
something that bores you.
I think I've learned a kind of similar thing, not just in like regular work, but in organizing, which is I think a lot of times activism can get portrayed as boring from the outside, but it doesn't have to be. Like, you don't have to drop everything you're doing and start something new. When I was younger, I thought that's what activism was. I didn't
Mhm.
understand it that well. So I thought once I started doing it, I wouldn't be able to just like goof off and have fun anymore. But I'm getting to do what I already want to do, which is mainly writing and creating, and I'm getting to connect it to something that I really care about. So I think
Mhm.
that's really special for me. And I think that's something a lot of people could look into, which is even if it seems random, there's probably a place for it in the movement. Like lots of people do not like to do math, but if you do, we need lots of math in organizing. Like we need to learn like how much should our budget be? How much are we going to hopefully receive from this grant? Things like that.
Absolutely.
And
Definitely.
speaking of skills, what do you think we need more of in the climate advocacy space right now, like our ecosystem?
I would say you can never have enough grassroots organizers.
Mhm.
Grassroots organizing is a skill that once you learn it and once you do it, you can replicate it for any issue. You can replicate it for all the issues that you need to work on. And I mean, not everyone likes phone banking. Not everyone likes door knocking. Not everybody likes having kickoff meeting events, on the evenings or on
Mhm.
weekends or like when people are available and building teams of volunteer organizers. Grassroots organizing is where I started. I spent my whole 20s doing grassroots organizing and then also some grassroots fundraising. And what I would say is that it showed me how you move policy. A lot of folks, policy might be seen as more luxurious of a type of career, but at the same
Mhm.
time, you can't get things passed unless you know how to organize for them. It's not just, oh, we got this bill introduced. Okay, now what? How are you going to move members of Congress, if it's a federal bill, and the president who has to sign it without actually having on the ground like a ground game? People power is
Mhm.
what makes any movement work. People power is how you win, and not enough people power is how you fail. And I think that what I've been seeing in everything in the world, no matter what issue, is people power. The phrase, the chant, the people united will never be
Mhm.
defeated. I feel like I have seen that happen with my own eyes. And I think that sometimes we forget that without the people power, you don't have anything. So I would love to see some serious, proper, intense trainings for grassroots organizing.
Mhm.
I was luckily able to get that from a place, Wellstone Action, which at the time was called Camp Wellstone. Now it's called Repower. And they trained me in '08 to be a grassroots organizer. And I started my first job
Mhm.
a week later as a grassroots organizer at Chesapeake Climate Action Network back in 2008. And from then on, I was like, this is how we win. So yeah, I would love to see more organizing and love to see a lot more young folks involved, like actually being in the streets, petitioning, building
Mhm.
names, building lists, and building their power.
That's the kind of stuff I want to see too, not just with young people, with everybody, because it's really cool to have like other young people speaking out about the same stuff as me and showing that like they care about the same issues, and it makes me feel like seen and heard. But
Absolutely.
and and this goes back to like making that activism a part of your life. I think I would also really like to see that just in general from more people. Like you don't have to do it like every single day or whatever, but I would really like to see more people doing activism. And even if they don't call it that, just like helping us out, supporting the movement, whatever, keep doing it regularly. I remember like back in 2020, for example, a lot of people would make like a one-time donation and then just move on with their lives and act like nothing happened. And I was like, guys, the problem is still here. And with I think that's what really takes people power is you have to keep people engaged and working on the issue for a long time. And I wonder if even just phrasing everything as like an issue can make it seem harder, is because it's not just that we have a problem that needs to be solved. We're trying to make things better for everybody.
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
While we're doing, like, obviously this can take a long time, and it can be hard to keep going when there's so much stuff happening. There's the news tends to focus on the negative, shocker. But what keeps you going in this?
But what keeps me going, honestly, is my community and my team. And when I mean my community, I mean like my climate community, community of people who care like I do and who understand that this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. It does get
Mhm.
exhausting. You know,
Absolutely.
I told you I took my first climate action in 1990 and I'm still going. And so it can kind of become, it can become depressing sometimes after a while where you're not seeing the progress you need.
Mhm.
You're seeing things get worse. You're seeing that we passed 1.5 degrees in the past year. We are out at
Mhm.
1.65 degrees Celsius as of June of last year to June of this year. They did the measurement and we have been at 1.65 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels for warming for the past year. So the whole like 1.5 to stay alive, that's our limit. We got to stabilize. We've already shot past that target, which was the goal of the Paris Agreement,
Mhm.
where scientists have said for decades, if we
Mhm.
stay at that and we don't stabilize at that level, we keep going higher, we will face the worst consequences of the climate crisis and, you know, probably ecological collapse over time. So for me, what keeps me
Mhm.
going are people who I know will never give up. You know, who will not go, you know, quietly into this good night. The people who I know will always be with me in the fight. And I would say what Zero Hour has really been for me is that community, that consistent community of people who I know I can count on and who I know are not going to leave this movement. Even if they go into different parts of their career and they might do different things, they're never going to stop fighting. And I think that that's really the community that we have built at Zero Hour that is very special. I've worked in many, many, many places, and there is no place I've ever been in that has had the kind of community that Zero Hour has, which is why I spent, you know, 6.5 years volunteering here. And so just after work, I do work all day and I come to calls in the evening because it was something that I realized was really, really important to me. A place where I could honestly do my best work. I think I've done my best work of my career with Zero Hour. And as I look back at my photos and videos of 5 years ago when we were running around the hill with Greta and going to New York for the UN Youth Climate Summit and doing all the 2 different climate strikes and all the things we were up to. I'm like, wow, I could never have done any of that like without Zero Hour. And it was such a blessing to always have them in my life and to have the team of that has continued to grow over the years and change. It's just been so refreshing to always have that community.
A lot of the same stuff that keeps me going is it's really nice to know that other people, like not just in Zero Hour, but especially you guys, because I see you a lot, is you're also seeing what's going on and you're acknowledging it and you're going, how can I help? I think that's really important because a lot of times, even now, like if I try to talk to like a quote unquote normal person about this stuff, they don't really reply or they don't really seem
Mhm.
to understand the gravity of the situation. And I don't think that's always their fault, but it's really helpful to have people working on this with you who get what's going on and they're not just saying, "Oh, that's happening." They're going, "How can I help fix this?" And I think that's really important. Like you don't have to like flip the switch yourself, but I think it's important for people to look at what's going on and ask, "Okay, what can I do? Like what's the lever that I can pull? What am I good at?" Like I'm good at writing, so I think about storytelling, I think about ads and narratives and stuff like that. Another thing that keeps me going is spite. I think about how the fossil
Jesus,
fuel
right.
industry wants us to be sad and despondent. That just makes me go, you know
Yes.
what? I'm going to keep going just to make you mad. I hope they think about me and they're annoyed. And when they try to go to sleep, they're like, she won't shut up.
Absolutely. I am motivated by spite as well. It's kind of like, you know, I'm not gonna stop fighting. Like I'm just gonna be very annoying. I'm gonna never stop being annoying. If you're a kid and you consider yourself an annoying child, grow into an even more annoying adult. That's what I did. And make
Like
that your
a good,
career, make being annoying your whole career. And that way, but
like a
pick your
mosquito.
targets. I like being annoying to the fossil fuel industry. I like
That's a
being
good
very
target.
annoying. I like being very annoying to the government because unfortunately our government does not do what it needs to do. So I'm very annoying to
No,
our government. And so pick your target of who you want to annoy and find a way to make a living out of it.
that's some good advice. Like obviously choose carefully,
True.
but aside from that, what's some advice you'd give to new or upcoming activists? Like someone who gets that there's a problem, but they aren't really sure how to get involved.
I would say is you have to ask yourself what it is that you really care about. What is it that
Mm-hmm.
no matter where you were, no matter what you imagine you had all the money you needed in life, everything was fine. What would you actually spend your time doing? Imagine if you didn't have to work for a living, right? Imagine you could just live in your favorite beach, chill, hang out. What would you actually wake up early for? What would you set an alarm for? What could you not imagine? What could you imagine not doing? Like you can't imagine yourself not doing it because in the end, you just pick whatever your passion is. And so like if you know that you have to be an organizer, you have to be an activist, you have to fight for something you care about, it's never going to leave you. And so if you have
Mm-hmm.
friends or family, I know especially for some folks, might have family members that try to push them towards a particular career, or they might try to dissuade them from um, being a part of this environmental movement or whatever thing they want to do. Because there are some people, luckily my parents have always just let me do whatever. They did not care. They were like, okay, she's gonna do environmental things. Like that's fine. Like, they were always supportive. And so I was very thankful to always be able to, pick my major I wanted, pick my master's program I wanted, things like that. But I would say is go deep and figure out exactly what you know you want to do and do it with no excuses. And do not let anyone dissuade you. Do not let anyone try to tell you what is realistic. Don't let people tell you, how are you going to make a living doing that? Because that's something I remember hearing from folks growing up. Not my family. My family was like, you'll find a way. But from just people around me, even friends, peers, even,
Mm-hmm.
who were like, how are you going to make a living doing that? Saving the earth. Like, come on. And I would say ignore them all. Ignore everyone who tells you you can't do it or you shouldn't. And whatever you do, do it well. Commit to it. Also, find a group that represents you. Nothing is wrong with volunteering. My first time lobbying, which was November 5th, 2007. Yes, I remember dates like that
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. It was that impactful. I said, I'll do this as a volunteer now with PowerShift Network, which was Energy Action Coalition at the time. And one of these days, it will be my career. I started organizing and I started lobbying completely as a volunteer. I just wanted to be a part of it. I was like, let me see what happens. Let me see. And also, you get to test things out. And so, if I hear there's an action, I would be there. I'll jump on the metro, go to DC. I also grew up in Maryland, right outside of DC. So, lobbying was very easy. It was like I just took the train. But do it even if you're not in a place like DC. You can do meetings over Zoom. You can get in touch with your elected officials, offices, and
Mm-hmm.
schedule a meeting with them and build a relationship with them. So just take action wherever you are and be consistent. And also, if you don't see results of your work within a year or 2 years, 3 years, don't be like, well, it's pointless. Keystone took 13 years to be defeated, Keystone XL pipeline. I started working on it in 2008. It got defeated finally January 20th, 2021.
I think I
13
remember
years.
that. It's Yeah, like I think it's easy to forget that this takes a long time, but that doesn't mean it's not working. I like that you're saying consistency too, because like I was saying about like making a one-time donation, and obviously like that can be helpful. Like lots of people need the money, but it's important to keep doing things or keep donating if you can. Just keep coming back and doing the job that you're doing, or pick a new job. Like for you, you would just go to an action whenever you could. And I don't think you have to be like perfect at it every single time, but if you keep showing up, that's super important here. Is the fossil fuel industry is kind of being like, well, maybe if we ignore them, they'll go away. Well, no, we're going to be annoying
No,
little mosquitoes,
we're
buzzing
going
in
to be
your ear. Please stop.
mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are tiny, but you always
Mhm.
know when they're in the room with you, especially if you're going to bed
Yeah.
and they try to get in your
Mhm.
ear. And it could be one mosquito, and it's like, do you hear me? Let me come closer. And it's like,
Making loud
what?
noises.
Why do you like my ears? And like, I remember seeing some quote that said, never doubt that being small or whatever can't make a difference. Have you ever been in a room trapped with a mosquito? And
I
it's
have,
like,
unfortunately.
and it's like everyone has been in a room trapped with a mosquito and they're just like trying to go to bed. And so even be an annoying mosquito. And then imagine, if you get a couple of your friends involved and you have like 100 mosquitoes in a room, that'd be
That's hard to
torture.
ignore.
That'd be torture. You can't escape.
Hmm.
That's organizing.
Numbers are super
People
important,
power.
and
That's how the
I don't think
people
our
united.
numbers are huge right now, but that's something we need to work on, is just getting more people involved. Like
Absolutely.
that way,
If you're
even
not
if
growing, if you're not growing in your movement, your foot movement, if it's not growing, it's shrinking.
Mhm. It could be like, even if we can't, like, I don't think it's realistic to expect absolutely everyone to go to like every action that exists, but you don't have to. It's okay if some, like, occasionally one of us will have work during a call time, or like we'll have to drop out of a project because something came up, but there's other people that can fill that role. And I think that's important. It's
Absolutely.
kind of like a relay race.
And don't do
Whoever the false,
everything. Don't do everything. Do what you
definitely.
can because burnout is real. And the
Yes.
idea that you're supposed to do everything is a trap. You cannot do everything. And all that will
Hmm.
happen is you will not physically be able to take care of yourself. And I've
Yes.
had organizing positions. I've been in places like that where I have been, where the expectation was you organize constantly, no breaks. That is not a sustainable
Grief.
model. I don't
It
recommend
makes no
that.
sense.
That is not the culture at 0 hours. So you're probably like, what? I'm like, no, because we don't do that here. We
Hmm.
work hard, but we
It
also
doesn't seem fair.
believe in balance and we believe in a culture of care. And so if you're not caring for yourself, how are you supposed to care for other people in the world? Put your own mask on, right?
Mhm.
Before you put on someone else's mask. So the culture of 0 hour, and this is why I think I've been here so long. January will be 7 years. In a few months will be 7 years. I think this is the longest org that I've ever been in, ever, because the culture is right. And I actually feel like I can take care of myself and like, live, but also be in a good fight with great people.
That's super important. And this isn't like something that always has to do with climate activism, but it's something that I think is important in general. Is in any movement, at the end of the day, why we're doing this is we're trying to take care of people. So of course you should take care of yourself. Why not? And speciation, I think, is what it's called, is when you specialize in a certain thing. That's something I've experienced too. Like, I used to try and do graphic design. That is not something I have experience with, and I'm not very good at it. So I decided to not focus on it, and instead I'm going to focus on what I know I enjoy doing and can do well, which is storytelling, content creation, things like that.
Mm.
And I think that's important because that's something you're going to be able to do quality work on. It's something you're going to actually like finish and do on time. And that means better results for your organization.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing. Don't, if the work you're doing is boring, it's not for you. Work is not
Hmm.
supposed to be boring. I know that's what we've been told probably by parents, that it's like, oh, sometimes you got
Yeah.
to do it. Not every task is going to be thrilling. Like, not every task is going to be amazing. There's tasks I'm just like, oh, okay, I got to do this task. I have tasks I have to do right now that I probably don't want to do, but I'm going to do it because it has to be done. But in the end, if it's for a greater goal that you enjoy, then it's worth it. But yeah, but I'm glad you found your path. I'm really happy that you found your path of like content creation and communications. And just to say, for you, you have been a wonderful volunteer at 0 hour. So consistent, so
You.
committed for years, committed for years, and always with such a joy, always with such a like fervor to bring joy to every space. I think one time on a call, I said you were the director of vibes. I think I was like, you're the
Mhm.
director of vibes, Avery. And you always
Mhm.
came out with like great checking questions. And I love, you even came up with a thing of check out questions where people would respond in our Slack, and just say like a question, maybe it's about music you're into, and just sort of keeping that community engagement. I think that relationship building is the key to organizing, fundraising, and lobbying. And once you master, understanding how important relationships are, and people are relational people, that is how we win. And that is something that I think you have also very much exemplified. So I really thank you for interviewing me and having me on as your first person too on the series.
Do you have anything else you want to say before we sign off?
Oh, no, that was all. I think that's everything. And I really appreciate you asking me these questions and really getting the story out of why I'm in this org and why any of us are in this org and why we're in this fight, more importantly. I mean, orgs are great, organize yourself, but really the main thing is not what org you're in, but also it's what are you working to accomplish together? And I feel like we've already accomplished so much since Zero Hour was founded 7 years ago. Actually, it was August 2017 is when it was officially founded. And then our first action was July of 2018, but it was actually, we just celebrated our seventh anniversary in August. So very happy to be here.
Thanks for answering my questions.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again. And thank you again for starting this series.